Alright guys, OPB here. Just had a quick thought overnight. I was watching a movie, and in the movie the guy, I think it was called The Road, I think it was, for some reason. Anyways, I was watching it. It's like a post-apocalyptic movie, and it got the gears in my head turning. On transportation, post-event, your vehicle might not be able to be used. Depends on the situation, obviously, but even if you, for example, throughout time, if your vehicle, depending on how long this thing will last, or would last, could last, events that could happen during it, yada shmada, your vehicle could become inoperable. So, in my mind, I started going into alternate modes of transportation and what I have for alternate modes of transportation. Personally, I'm a huge fan of bikes. A, it's good exercise. B, they're quiet. So if you have to move through an area, it's a lot better than walking because you can carry more weight, and they're a lot quieter and faster than walking. And most people know how to ride a bike. I recently purchased one. I'm looking into purchasing one. One of those three-wheeled ones. Has like almost like a trunk in the back, in between the two rear wheels. They're a bit pricey for what I'd want to pay, so I'm going to try to find one used. But you can get like a cheap hardtail. If you guys don't know what that is, it's just solid frame, no suspension in the rear like you would on a normal mountain bike. It's called a hardtail. Yeah, you can get one of those cheap, brand new for like $100. And if, I've had those before and they last pretty long until you decide to try to jump one, and doesn't work out too well. But yeah, like those bikes, they're really reliable. They're not going to break down on you. Not if you're just riding them. Nothing wrong with it. If you got to go through some hard terrain, I would recommend spending more money on it. My mountain bike that I used to have, I don't have it anymore. It was stolen. It was a downhill mountain bike. I used to mountain bike as a hobby. It was about $3,000, give or take. Then plus, once you upgrade the tires and all that, starts adding up. So it was probably close to a $4,000 downhill bike. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to that extent. I had that because I didn't feel like getting up on my face when I was going downhill, but that bike was extremely rugged. It's just like anything else, guys. You pay for what you get. If you want to be able to go through insane terrain, you're going to want to spend the money on it. Now, don't get me wrong, that $100 mountain bike could probably do it. Would it be still in one piece when you got to the bottom? Probably not. So that being said, you got to remember that everything you're carrying will ultimately resort in going back to a manned portable system. So you have to be able to carry it yourself. And you got to make sure you got good shoes on your Lamborghinis, as I like to call them. So footwear is another alternate mode of transportation. Personally, I have two types of boots that I normally use. One I got on right now, just Mossy Oak hunting boots. They're just rain boots essentially, with the scent blocker in them. Neoprene upper. They're great because you can walk through morning dew. It is first thing in the morning here, as you guys can probably see the sun's coming up as I'm on my way to work. You can walk through the morning dew and not get your pants wet. And then once it dries out, I normally switch over into either a low-cut hiking boot or a combat boot. It really depends on the temperature. If it's super, super, super hot, I'll probably go to the low-cut. It's still reliable. You can still move in it. Unless I got to go in rocky terrain, then I will put on boots. Obviously, you want that ankle support. So another thing I was looking at, ATV, snowmobile, things like that. Again, great, cover large amounts of ground very quickly. Side by side would even be a good prep. I wouldn't recommend buying one new. If you can find one used, yeah, go ahead and pick it up, because new they're like 20 grand, and that's the price of a car. So if you're doing that, you may as well buy an old truck or something and then just use the truck. But sometimes you got to make do with what you got. So ATVs you can normally find for $1,000, reliable one. You might have to put some money into it, but if you're mechanically inclined, you can find them for a couple $100. That's definitely not a problem. Snowmobile, same thing. $2,000 if you live in a snowy environment. Personally, I prefer the Yamaha Enticer. Those things are bulletproof. If you want to get an older sled, yeah, you can go with the Yamaha Enticer, BRP, Bombardier, make a good one. ATV wise, again, Yamaha or Honda is really what I would go with. Polaris does make a decent one. BRP makes a really good ATV. But again, price point, pay for what you get. In the movie, the guy was pushing a shopping cart with all of his supplies in it, and that got me thinking for urban. I know not everybody can live out in the country. I myself am working on that right now, getting further out of the city. I'm about as far as I can get right now. So I'm doing the best with what I have where I'm at. So a shopping cart is a good means of transportation. Yes, you're still going to have to walk, but if you have young children, they do have the seats in them, so they're not walking, and you can still carry a large amount of supplies, right? And you may not have to carry it all on your back. Yeah, you could have a backpack on, but you could just throw it in there. And when you see items, if you need them, you can always pick them up and throw them in. It's like walking around with your own pickup truck, really. So that got me thinking for that. I know a couple of people who are not wanting to move out of the city, so that's an option. I mean, I doubt anybody post-event will be taking shopping carts, so wouldn't really mean much. And again, I've seen it personally, shopping carts used as road barricades. So that's also an option. Shopping carts as makeshift barricades. It's a possibility. Other things you can do: boats, canoes, kayaks. I'm looking into getting a canoe. There's a large river system up here. The Voyageurs, obviously, if you guys know anything about the fur trading business, back in the early 1800s here in Canada, they got across most of the country on a river network. So, and you got to remember too, these cities that are still around were all part of that river network. So you can still get to everywhere through the river system. And people don't really remember that because they're so used to the roads, right? So there's a large kayaking hobbyist center up here. Lots of people like to kayak. One of my friends is descended from a voyageur. He was a fur trader, and my buddy still, I guess, follows in the family's roots. He also does fur trading. Well, he's a trapper. So, yeah, canoes, kayaks, all good things to remember and think about. John boats, those flat bottom boats, good source of transportation. You can get through pretty shallow water with those, a couple inches. You can carry lots of stuff in a John boat. Pelican makes a decent one. I'm actually looking into getting one of those as well. They're also great for fishing. If you have the ability and there's water near your property, and you have a means to do it, fishing is an excellent way to sustain food. But remember, overfishing will cause the water to run out of fish. So that brings you back to population density. Okay, you got to live where there's not a lot of people. Other things to think about. I know a couple of pilots. They have their own airplanes. If you're rich enough to afford that, well, it's not their own really, but you know what I mean. They kind of grouped together and bought one. Helicopters, ultralight airplanes. I believe in some areas you don't need a license for those, but here you do. Parasails, if you live up in the mountains, that could be a potential advantage. All of those little things of non-conventional ways of transportation are good. All things to consider. Things like motorcycles, dirt bikes, right? Motorcycle, you can carry a trailer behind you. They're quick. You can get around fairly decently. Going in and out of traffic, I know one of my friends, that's his choice of get out of Dodge vehicles, motorcycle. Logic being that he can swerve in and out of traffic. Yeah, that's good. They're also fairly light. So, well, depending on the motorcycle, they're fairly light. So if you have to push it or move it or lift it, if you're physically fit, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. All right, so that's just some things to think about with that. OPB out.